Hello, and thank you for joining us on Spotlight for the Candidate. Today we are speaking with Nigel Bristow, a candidate for North Carolina, District 9. Nigel, welcome to Spotlight on the Candidate. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm wonderful, and I'm very glad to have you here with us today. Um, you had mentioned in our previous dialogue that two of and by the way, folks, Nigel is TPC certified. And what that means is that he has taken the oath of the Politician's Creed. And if you're not familiar with the Politician's Creed, make sure after this video that you go to www.thepoliticianscreed.com and go to the page on the Articles of the Politician's Creed. And those seven principles are the principles to which Nigel Bristow had taken a solemn oath, all in defense of his constituents. So, Nigel is a TPC certified candidate, and as I mentioned, he's running for North Carolina District 9. And so, Nigel, you had mentioned that two of those seven articles that mean the most to you is Article 2, the public servant, and Article 4, honesty, integrity, and transparency. Could you tell us a little bit about why the public servant um, is so meaningful to you?
Well, the public servant one kind of resonates with me because my whole life, that's exactly what I've been. 20 years as a New York City police officer, a retired homicide detective. During those 20 years, for 10 of those years, I taught in the high school that I graduated from. Even now, since retiring from New York and relocating here to North Carolina, I've worked with the state, with Department of Adult Corrections as a probation and parole officer. Now I'm a chief of probation, but in essence, it's public service. And being a public servant means that, you serve the people and you're accountable to the people. You're not up here and everyone else is down here. You work with them and you serve them, and it's just been my lifelong creed to just be able to help people. And when you do public service, you don't do it to be rich. You do it because you have that love in your heart for people, and you want to always do right by people. So that's why it resonates the most with me.
Well, very good. So, um, so good. And a lot of the politicians get into politics do exactly what you said not to do, and that's they get into it to get rich, and to become self-serving. And so, yeah, candidates such as yourself who are coming in for the right reasons, these are the kind of candidates we need, and the ones we're seeking out, the ones we want to talk to. So again, thank you for joining us today. The other article that you pointed out was Article 4, which is the centerpiece of the tent of the seven articles. Honesty, integrity, and transparency. And speak to us a little bit about that and what that means, not just to you, but your constituency as well.
So honesty, integrity, and transparency. So the constituency, they want a leader or representative that, of course, is honest, someone that when they say something, they mean it and the people believe it, and that integrity, that they're trustworthy and they have a personality or something that just emits trust. And of course, transparency, meaning that there's no secrets. For example, we have representatives that there's no transparency because the people that they're supposed to serve have no idea what they're doing in Washington. Now, they forget, these representatives, who their real bosses are. We have those representatives that they seek to get rich, whether it's through trading on the stock market, and having all these investments, and it's sad because some of them are multimillionaires. So someone who is supposed to represent the people, that's a multimillionaire, do you really think that they feel they have common ground with their constituency? They don't, because what they tend to do, they want to become more rich. So if they're promised certain things, whether it's by lobbyists or by one political party or by the executive, then they're going to go that route
Hmm.
because they feel that there's nothing to be gained by serving their constituency because that's not why they're in it. Now, people or representatives that are in it for the people, they don't care about that and they don't care about being rich because that's not what it's all about. It's about how can I help my fellow man? How can I make your life better? I work for you, the people. And see, the interesting thing is the power is not in the executive branch, is not in the money, although people think it is because money is power. But the
Hmm.
power is with the people in their vote. And that's why, democracy and the voting rights are being attacked as hard as they are because we know history has taught us that when people get together in masses, they elect leaders, they have presidents, governors, representatives, just based on their voice and their vote.
Hmm.
So, and I say that to say, if people realize more about the power that they had, they can really hold their representatives accountable and say, you know what, you're not really doing what we need you to do. So now we have the midterms. Now we're going to see you later, and we're going to pick someone that resonates with us. But for years, whether through low voter turnout and people weren't really engaged in the midterms, those leaders continue to stay in office time and time again. My opponent, the incumbent, has been
Hmm.
there since 2013. And as I go throughout the district, and I've been in people's living rooms, churches, backyards, everywhere, and they essentially say the same thing. They don't know who he is. He's never been back. Prime
Yeah.
example, the government shutdown, 50 some odd days. Now, it's important to note that when Congress is not in session, and we know they're not in session 24/7, where are they
Hmm.
supposed to be? In their district, in their district, giving town halls or briefings to say, hey, this is what's going on in Washington. So what they did in essence during this government shutdown, they didn't come back to the district. And I'm talking specifically District 9, the incumbent that I face. So don't you think
I
it would have
mean,
been
they
important?
weren't even available. I mean, could you go to their office? Were they there or?
Oh, from where every indication that I've heard, they were met with pretty much static when they went to the office. A
Mhm.
recording, someone, a staffer taking information. They received a form email saying thank you for your contact in the office and blah blah blah, but no personal touch because
Mhm.
it would have been important for people to know during the shutdown that their representatives had their back, even though little could be done, but just for that representative to come back and say, listen, I know we're in the shutdown. We're working hard to get back, get everything back together. In the meantime, is there anything that I can possibly try to do for you? And that will go a long way.
Yeah, I mean, and you said the word early on in your description of honesty, integrity, and transparency, and talk about their trustworthiness. Those three things are the pathway to trustworthiness. And if a politician is not being transparent, um, how can you trust them?
Hey,
And to be transparent, you got to be available. And in some of our previous discussions, you talked about once you're in office, and even before, you're doing this right now. You're making yourself incredibly available, and that is one of the ways that you intend to maintain that transparency and maintain that trust. Is you talk about multiple ways that you would be making yourself available to the public, because you're obviously aware that without that availability, trust cannot grow. You know,
that's
and,
right.
yeah. Um, you know, you picked, I kind of want to say some tough subjects here. They sound simple on the surface of it. The failure, one of the things we want to talk about is the failure of our representatives to protect us from a rogue executive. And I think everybody across all the parties at this point understands that we have a rogue executive. And so, you know, that and lack of accountability of the current administration and representatives no longer serving the interests of the people. These are easy things to say, but they're actually complex subjects when you really pick them apart to find out the mechanics underneath them. Um, why do you think our representatives are failing to protect us from a rogue executive? It's obvious they see the writing on the wall, but why are they still not doing it?
Well, it comes back to who they believe their boss is. they're so afraid of this executive. They're so afraid of, this political party that seemingly has all this power over them that they don't want to buck the system because they
And
have
and
been. Go ahead.
and sorry for interrupting, but I think you really hit the nail there when you said the political party, because the current administrator, current executive, controls the political party, but it's the political party that makes decisions about awarding funding and allowing primary and things like this. So the real hammer is with the political party. Um, but yeah, in this particular case, we have an executive who is taking control of the party, and those two things spell disaster. Um, so spot on. But anyway, keep going.
Right. And essentially, that political party controls the White House, which is the executive branch,
Hmm.
arguably controls the courts,
Hmm.
and controls Congress. So
Hmm.
now you have the three separate branches of government, and each branch is a check of the other. Now, Congress is the ultimate one because that's where you have your oversight, the power of the purse, okay, the power to levy taxes. All have been usurped and have been circumvented by the executive. Okay, when you have, because everything that's going on from the tariffs, which affect the constituency, because though that money has to trickle down.
Hmm.
So if these countries are being levied by heavy taxes, it's going to fall on the consumer. And Congress is the only branch that is authorized to levy taxes. So you have that, and the fact that there's no oversight. I say all that to say that Congress can shut this down today, but they choose not to because, unfortunately, the
Exactly.
party that is in control of Congress will not do that. They turned their back on the Constitution. Now, remember, they took an oath to
Hmm.
uphold the Constitution. The Constitution says many things, one of which all people have certain rights against, violations of the Fourth Amendment. Everything we're seeing now with ICE. It doesn't
Hmm.
say anything about being a U.S. citizen. It says people, period. Just the fact that you're here in this country, you have those constitutional rights. So they stop it. They choose not to. So now you've seen what happened. We have where the Supreme Court has said that ICE can racially profile. Now, I was a law enforcement officer, 20 years in New York, 15 years with the state now. And we
Hmm.
took an oath too. And we were forbidden to racially profile. And we have the Constitution we have to follow, which includes obeying the the constitutional amendments.
Hmm.
So it just doesn't track. It doesn't track because again, the whole idea, the founding fathers setting up these three branches of government was so you have checks and balances. That's gone out the window. And that's why we're in the situation we're in. Now, when you talk to the people, they want to see checks and balances. And remember, these issues resonate, as you said, across all party lines. So it doesn't matter Republican, Democrat, Green Party, unaffiliated, independent. It does not matter. These are everyday people that are being victimized. And then you have a representative that won't protect them.
Hmm.
So,
And it's there's two roles that a politician has. And the first role is to represent their constituents. That's the role they were voted into office for. And obviously they should represent with regards to the things their constituents need. Yeah. And but unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but just, normally it's actually is there's issues that extend beyond the boundaries of your district or any one district. And for those things, you have to collaborate with the other politicians. So the second role of a politician is to collaborate with other politicians. And it is through that role that accountability starts to move away from the constituents to smaller groups of people, cliques, which become parties, which then work to strengthen their position, eventually building rules and things that block other parties and consolidate their position. And a couple of years ago, 4 years ago, I think it was in Ohio, they passed a law that all the judges on ballots, the ballots for voting for judges, and I think sheriffs also, must now state the party that that judge or
Mhm.
sheriff is with. And why? Because what that does is allows people, it allows constituents to be even lazier and not do the research. And instead, just, I'm lazy, I didn't have time, I'm trying to just live my life, get by, I didn't have time to research candidates. It's time to vote. I'm just going to vote for the Democrat or Republican or whoever. Okay. Um, the flip side of that is it creates a sense of ownership from that judge or sheriff to that party. Okay. An obligation thereof, and so forth. And so that's a bad thing. It is a consolidation of the accountability over on the collaboration side. Okay. So subtle little rules like that evolve over time towards that end. Um, and by the way, you as a TPC certified candidate, you have your badge and so forth. Um, and so people watching this, when you go to vote, you know, look for yard signs and stuff that have Nigel's badge on it or any TPC um, sworn candidate. These are candidates who have taken an oath like Nigel did to stand by the constituents in the face of party pressure and things like this. So when you're at the voting polls and you see that badge, you know, you don't have to vote strictly on party. You can trust that that candidate has sworn to stand by you. So, so um, sorry, I'm getting off on a tangent there, Nigel, but
No,
you
no, it
you
all
hit on.
it all resonates with me, and I'm sure the viewers will
Yeah,
find the same thing. Mhm.
I mean, you hit on a subject that's very close to my heart, and that's that accountability drift over to the collaboration side and the things we can do to bring it back. And so yeah, with regards to representatives failing to protect us, it's because of that, that gravity over there. So what are some things that you can do when you get in office to reverse that? Yeah.
So ideally, the way it works best in Congress is through compromise.
Okay.
Because and that's why there's two sides of the aisle. You have the
Hmm.
left and you have the right. Some people, they hear left and right and they don't know what that origin is. It's the chambers of Congress. Actually, you have the left side, which is a Democratic side, right side.
Yeah.
What works best is when you cross party lines. So say, for example,
Hmm.
I may have an issue in my district and I may have a problem and I'm in search of a solution. Now, there may be someone on the other side of the aisle that works in a similar district. They have similar demographics or a similar problem that may have solved it. Now, it's up to me in service of the people to go over to that side and say, hey, Representative so and so, I noticed you had a similar problem last year, a similar issue. How did
Hmm.
you work that out? And because I'm willing to work across the aisle, that representative may say, well, you know what, Bristow, let me tell you what we did. And you know what? I'll even co-sponsor something with you to help your district out. Now we've come together. Now we've formed a partnership, if you will, because at the end of the day, it's about what we could do for our constituency. Okay.
Hmm.
That's what matters, not ego and left and right and all that. That serves no purpose because it's the people that suffer if we don't do our best to make life better for them. And I'll give you an example. John McCain was great at working across the aisle because at the end of the day, he was about the people. So, you
Yeah.
know, and we've lost that.
And
We've lost
that's a
that.
good point. That's a very good point. Yeah, I hadn't thought about it that way, but every action you take to work across the aisle with someone on the other side who's willing to do the same is proof positive that you are putting your constituents ahead of party.
That's
Yeah.
right.
So that's
And it
very
should always, I'm running a campaign, people first. It's people over politics, people over party, all of
good.
that, because it's about the people, plain and simple. And once we get back to that, then we could start seeing some good improvements and some changes. Because why we're in the position we're in now is because that's gone out the window.
Yeah,
Okay.
very good. And there is a candidate of the other party that has also taken the oath of the politician's creed in a district adjacent to yours. So if she wins and you win, you two will be able to work across the aisle. Yeah.
That's right. And I
You have,
look
you have
forward to it.
common ground. Yeah. So very good. And so one of the subjects you want to talk about was the lack of accountability in the current administration. We talked a little bit about where that comes from and so forth. Do you want to expound on that at all?
Well, so one of the prime examples is what's going on with ICE. Now we've had two
Okay.
American citizens that were shot and killed. And then, the administration says, oh, there'll be an investigation, the Justice Department or the FBI. How can we trust them? Because we've seen right after the shooting happened, the false narratives that were put out from the administration. So again, yeah, like I said, I've been a law enforcement officer for 35 years. Now, if we're involved in a shooting, there's an immediate investigation. We're put on administrative leave.
Mhm.
Evidence is collected, and I know with New York City when I was there, what what they would do is the district attorney would have a a separate investigation because remember the district attorney represents the people, so the district attorney has to make sure that the police officer didn't do anything to violate their law or act, outside the scope of their employment. So very often, the state would present facts to a grand jury, and not because they were looking to lock up the cop or anything like that, to make
Mhm.
sure they avoid the appearance of impropriety, because they can say we collected evidence, we had a separate investigation separate from the police department, we presented the facts to a grand jury, the grand jury did not indict because there was no crime, or the grand jury returned an indictment based on these facts.
Mhm.
Okay, we don't see that here with the killings in ICE, and go beyond that, just the treatment of these individuals that are detained illegally. We saw a couple of weeks ago the poor man that was pulled out of his shower in sub-zero temperatures in Minnesota, and he was an American citizen. They busted in his house, violation against the Fourth Amendment, and drug him out. Now, I've made thousands of arrests,
Mhm.
and we've always treated that person with dignity because no matter what they were charged with or what I arrested them for, they were innocent until proven guilty. They have rights. So we have to be sure we treat them with, in in view of those rights. So, and there have been many times when I had made an arrest of somebody in their house and maybe, they weren't dressed fully. We allow them to get dressed, put some shoes on, have a coat, because it was our job to protect them as well. And with ICE, we don't see that. And it's just, again, they got carte blanche. They could do what they want. And it's just, and we'll talk about the Defense Department or the Department of War, whatever they call it, blowing up those ships or those boats. All right. We don't know what the deal that is other than what we're being told. Okay. So again, those people on those boats were killed. No due process. We, the American people, don't know who they were and what was behind it. But now they were killed essentially in the name of America, in the name of the United States. So we're to blame too, because just by mere fact that we're U.S. citizens and we have an executive that has committed these acts. And again, Congress is the only branch that can declare war. So you can arguably say, is that a is that an act of war, blowing up ships in international waters that belong to a sovereign nation? Possibly. And then there's what happened in Venezuela.
Yeah.
So again, it's
And I mean, part of this issue that you're talking about is that um, you know, Congress did not do its job on um, certifying nominees. Remember last year they passed that sweeping 156 nominees, all approved at once without any actual review. And what we have is we have a lot of people at the heads of departments, at the head of the Department of Defense, at the head of DHS and so forth, who are ignorant people. These are not intelligent people. They've gotten by on looks and loudness, but they're not very intelligent. And do you know how we can tell they're not very intelligent? Intelligent people are empathic. The more intelligent someone is, the better they're able to model the minds of other people, and they cannot help but be empathic. And what we're seeing out of these departments is a total lack of empathy. Yeah. Um, you mentioned the death of Renee Good and Alex Preddy, and there have been, a dozen other deaths, but probably the most egregious one was not a direct death at the hands of ICE, but directly caused by ICE, and that was the Jordanian man's son. He was detained in October, and his son had been born with a disability that wasted away his muscles and stuff, um, and all his life, his son has struggled to just survive, and his father took care of him. And finally, in 2019, his father quit his job to spend his time full time, 24/7, looking after his son to keep him alive. He was the only person who could look after him, and ICE took him away and left the son on its own. The family, the extended family, tried the best to look after him, but they didn't know what to do, and so forth. And they tried to get a uh, you know, self-reconnaissance release because the father's not going to flee because he's got the
Right.
son to look after, and ICE wouldn't let him do it. Um, and the son passed away a few days ago. He would have kept living, he would have been fine, but without that constant care, he couldn't survive.
No.
And that heartlessness, and now they won't even they when he was dying, it was too late to save him. Um, the people around the son in the hospital tried to get ICE to let the father come and say goodbye. They wouldn't even do that. This is just abject cruelty for the sake of cruelty. And it is a mark of ignorance, you know.
And to your point, let's go one step further. We don't know the conditions of those being detained.
Yes.
We hear some vague stories. We know it's cruel and unusual punishment.
Hmm.
Again, the Eighth Amendment. They don't even allow Congress in to inspect these facilities. Now they pass certain laws that they can, but you got to give them advance notice. Again, it's Congress has the oversight, so they should be able to show up at a moment's notice to inspect the facility. We see what happened with Alligator Alcatraz. I
Yes.
mean, the fact that it's even named that is insane.
Hmm.
And we know there's at least some 30 odd detainees that have died in custody, and we don't know what really happened with those deaths. You
Hmm.
know, we're being told, oh, suicide, apparently natural. But how do we know? We know that the administration has been less than truthful from day one, and the level of cruelty. Now, and then we know that most of these detention facilities are run by private companies, that get these contracts from the powers of influence from the executive or
Yes.
this administration. So again, there's no sense of checking out who are these individuals that have these contracts.
Hmm.
Okay, let's inspect their facilities. That's not being done. Now we know regular prisons and regular jails, they're inspected. They have to have a certain level of sanitation and provide health care and things of that nature and subject to inspection, whether it be by state, county executives or officials. We don't have that here. So what is going on in these detention centers? Not to mention those detainees that are shipped out of the country to God only knows what type of facilities. And again, all without due process.
Yeah. John Oliver had an excellent episode on incarceration in America, and I think two episodes, one on private prisons. And it is, yeah, it's stunning the difference between private prisons and government-run ones. And I agree with you. Um, that is another breadcrumb to follow. But
Yeah.
yeah, um, the it's a big ball of yarn, knotted yarn that you're pulling threads in there, and um, but the steps you're taking, being accountable to the people first and setting a standard of trustworthiness by being available to them is it's a critical first step that all the candidates at this midterms coming up need to abide by and so forth. Otherwise, we won't be able to unravel this knotted, you know, ball. So, um, the representatives we have, they're no longer serving the interests of the people. And we've talked a good bit about how this came about and so forth. But they've built a lot of mechanisms to keep themselves in office. And one easy way to look at it is to look at the odds of being an incumbent in office. They're very slim, you know. And um, first-time candidates, uh, a lot of people, they say, I'm going to run for office, and they get all charged up and they put together a campaign and stuff, and they don't realize how much is involved in putting a campaign together. It's, I've started 39 businesses, and um, I've exited several and folded several and so forth, so forth. But starting a business in general, it takes 2 years to get traction. Running a campaign is just like starting a business, you know, but you only have 9 months or 12 months to get to traction, you know. And so, you know, most often people who are running for the first time don't win, you know. It takes 2 or 3 runs. So I'm very glad this is your second run. You've got a machinery in place from your previous one, so you've built on it, and that's fantastic. I think you're going to do a lot better. I think you get very good odds coming into this. And
That's right. And like I said, we're structured. The grassroots campaign, the People First campaign,
mhm,
it's working. It's working. And like I said, the people in the district, they're just not happy with what's going on, and they need relief. They need relief, and they need a relief from a person that they can trust, that they know, okay, this person has done this their whole life. So we don't have to really guess, okay, because some of the issues with politicians, you know, you have to have a why. Why am I doing this? And if those reasons aren't grounded in what you want for the constituency and building people up, then it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing. And then it becomes, if you do get in, and that's what leads to what we have now. Versus, and I say that to say those representatives that allow the executive to run rogue because they're afraid of being primaried,
mhm,
their moral compass is out of whack. And I say that because if they're for the people in their district, they'll be willing to stand up for them,
or them. Yeah,
and not worry about a primary, because the people will put you back in
that's
if
right.
you're serving
Regardless,
them,
that's right.
because you're going to make your argument to the people and say, look, I'm standing with you. You see what I'm up against. I need your help. And they'll rally around them. But you have those representatives that don't want to take that chance because they're so afraid that they're going to lose that power because the primary's coming in, or that rogue executive, or that political party machine is just going to throw all this money into their campaign
Hmm.
for their opponent, that they don't have a chance. But again, that is the issue with big money and dark money in politics.
Yeah,
Okay. It corrupts our government, it corrupts our politicians. And you have those candidates that they live and die by that. And it shows. It shows. And I say this, and I'll say this until I can't say it no more. Money can't vote. People do that. Now, I'm not naive. I know money is needed in campaigns for certain resources. That is true. But when we're talking the amount of money and influence, when we're talking about millions and billions of dollars in campaigns, it's just mind numbing. Because what we see from the media, and what we hear is, oh, this candidate, it can win because they've raised billions of dollars or millions of dollars. What does that have to do with anything? If they're not
hmm,
in touch with the people and meeting the people where they're at, that money isn't going to mean anything. I mean, we look at the Kamala Harris campaign. They raised over $2 billion. She did not win. And why? Because she didn't get the votes needed to win. Now, you can argue back and forth why she didn't get the votes. That's not the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is we're focusing on the money, and
Mm-hmm.
then we lose our vision as to what the people really want and need. All right. You look at the newly elected mayor of New York, Van
Mm-hmm.
Dam.
No doubt.
Okay.
Yeah.
He went and met the people. They loved him because he went out and talked with the people and said, "Hey, what do you need to see to make a better New York?" And that is something that, and I was born and raised in New York. All right, so I see how that resonated with everybody because no politician had done that before
Mm-hmm.
for
So
years.
what are you doing to build a network out into your? Because I mean, I certainly applaud the being in touch with the people and stuff like this, but you get into office and being in touch with the people. Um, so how many people in your district?
There's roughly maybe between 7 and 800,000
Okay, seven, eight
in
hundred
district.
thousand.
Yeah. Hmm.
So what naturally happens is a group forms around the candidate that some of which follows them into office, not officially, but as a KC that transforms into an advisory council or something like that. And that ends up forming a barrier, you know. So how do you keep that open? How do you create a network that gives you tendrils throughout the whole community? Those big fundings, like the billions of dollars that Kamala Harris raised, and the huge amounts. Thank you, Citizens United. That's sarcastic, by the way.
Hmm.
The huge amounts spent on advertising. How does the constituent know the candidate? Through ads, as opposed to directly connecting with the candidate or directly connecting with someone who's connected with the candidate. It's that latter, directly connecting a chain of people all the way to the candidate, that is the real way of transferring trust throughout a district. So hopefully you're working and building a network that can do that, and because that'll help you get into office and help you stay in office and help you avoid that party pressure and so forth.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So, um, okay, fantastic. Anything else you want to talk about on this subject?
Oh, wait. Uh, Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Can you repeat that? You faded out.
I was saying, is there anything else you'd like to hit on this subject? So,
Well,
the subject, in all three of these, failure of representatives protect us from rogue executive, the lack of accountability, and they're obviously no longer serving the interests of the people. And so we've heard a bit about how where you stand on these things. How are you running your campaign with regards to these?
so what we've done is what we call People First Tour. And
Okay.
we've gone throughout the district and again, series of town halls, meet and greets, some phone banking, and essentially just getting the pulse of the district. We also have a survey that we've sent out, electronic survey. It's also been connected to the website where we asked the constituency, if you will, what are their top issues or concerns, essentially what keeps them up at night. And we compile this list and we get a general idea. And they also put their zip code in. So we have an idea of what areas have different issues and like that.
Okay, fantastic. And hopefully you'll keep that on your website after you get in office, because that's the kind
Yes.
of feedback that's very important. Awesome. Okay. And well, thank you very much for your time today, Nigel.
Yes.
Everybody watching, Nigel Bristow is our guest today. He's running for North Carolina District 9, U.S. House Representative. And if you'd like to learn more about him and sign up to support him, you can visit him at www.nigelbristowforcongress.com. And so thank you, Nigel.
Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure.
Yeah, likewise. And to all of you watching this video, please click the like and subscribe buttons below so we can bring you more candidates like Nigel. Be safe and remember to vote wisely.